Cassiano Belcastro hadn't slept through the night in 2 years. Not since he put a bullet in his wife's chest and watched her body fall into the Black River below. Tonight was no different. He sat in his study at 3 a.m., a glass of whiskey balanced on the armrest of his leather chair. The amber liquid caught the moonlight streaming through the window, casting shadows of the photograph in his other hand. Ginevra. Dark hair cascading past her shoulders. Eyes that held both fury and laughter in the same glance. The woman who had betrayed him. The woman he'd loved more than his own miserable life. The woman he'd murdered. He lifted the glass to his lips, then froze. Jasmine. The scent hit him like a fist to the chest. Sharp. Unmistakable. It drifted through the study, curling around him. That was her perfume. The one she wore every single day of their marriage. The one he'd burned every bottle of after she died because the smell made him want to put his own gun in his mouth. But there it was. In his house. In the middle of the night. Cassiano set down the glass with deliberate care. His hand moved to the desk drawer, fingers wrapping around cold steel. The gun felt heavier than usual. Or maybe his hands were shaking. He couldn't tell anymore. His house was a fortress. Cameras on every entrance. Guards patrolling the grounds. Motion sensors that would wake him if a rat crossed the lawn. No one got in without clearance. No one got near him without his knowledge. So why did his house smell like his dead wife? He stood slowly, gun raised, and moved into the hallway. The marble floors were cold beneath his bare feet. He'd dismissed the live-in staff months ago. Couldn't stand people watching him pace at night, or their pitying glances when they found him passed out in his study with an empty bottle and her photograph clutched to his chest. The scent grew stronger as he walked. It led him toward the guest wing, where his new assistant was staying. Bianca Moretti. She'd been working for him for 2 months. Efficient. Brilliant. Unnerving in ways he couldn't articulate. She knew things about him that no one should know. How he took his coffee. Which door he preferred to enter through. The exact tone of voice that would calm him down when he was about to explode in a meeting with men who wore their violence like cologne. Marco, his second-in-command, had warned him. They'd been sitting in Cassiano's office, going over the quarterly numbers, when Marco had suddenly looked up from the spreadsheets. "She's too perfect, boss. No one's that good." Cassiano had waved him off. "She's educated. Trained. That's what we paid for." "No, I mean she's too perfect. Last week, she handed you the Genovese file before you even asked for it. She knew you'd want it. How'd she know that? Maybe she's just observant. Or maybe she's something else." But Cassiano had ignored him. Because Bianca made him feel something he hadn't felt since Ginevra died. Something close to being alive. Like his heart was still capable of beating for a reason beyond pure habit. Now he stood outside her door, pressing his ear against the dark wood. It was silent. Then, from inside, a sound that made his blood turn to ice water. Humming. Soft. Haunting. A melody that scraped against old wounds. It was the song Ginevra used to hum when she thought he wasn't listening. Some old Neapolitan lullaby her grandmother had taught her. She'd hum it while doing paperwork, while cooking dinner on the rare nights they stayed home, while lying in bed next to him in the dark, her fingers tracing patterns on his chest. Cassiano's hand trembled on the doorknob. His finger found the trigger of his gun. Impossible. He burst through the door, gun aimed at chest height, ready to shoot whatever ghost had crawled into his home. The room was empty. Moonlight spilled through the open window. White curtains billowed in the night breeze. The bed was made with precision. Her laptop sat closed on the desk. Her shoes were lined up neatly by the closet. But no Bianca. Cassiano moved deeper into the room, gun sweeping left to right. He turned back toward the window. That's when he saw it. On the pillow, placed with the kind of deliberate care that made his skin crawl, was a single white lily. Stem cut to the exact same length they'd used at Ginevra's funeral. Cassiano backed out of the room. His hands were shaking now. He wasn't a man who believed in ghosts. He'd made too many of them himself. They didn't come back or haunt. They just rotted. But something was hunting him. And it knew exactly how to make him bleed. To understand how Cassiano Belcastro ended up being haunted by a ghost, you have to go back 2 years. To the night he became a murderer of the woman he loved. We're building an empire of thrillers here. Drop a comment, hit that thumbs up, and subscribe to stay in the inner circle. Trust me, you'll want to be here for the ending. Cassiano had been untouchable. At 43, he controlled half the underground operations in northern Italy. His empire wasn't built on drugs or trafficking. He'd always drawn the line there, told himself that it made him different from the true monsters. Instead, he ran shipping, gambling, protection networks that kept smaller businesses safe from the predators who'd devour them otherwise. He laundered money for people who needed their finances cleaned, and he did it so well that even the authorities who knew what he was doing couldn't prove it. He wasn't the biggest fish in the Mediterranean. That title belonged to the old families in Sicily who'd been running operations since Mussolini was in diapers. But Cassiano was the smartest. He'd modernized everything, moved operations into legitimate businesses, created enough shell corporations and offshore accounts that unraveling his empire would take a team of forensic accountants a decade. And he had something most men in his world didn't have: a wife who knew everything. Ginevra Belcastro wasn't some mob princess married off for alliances. She'd been a corporate lawyer when they met. Sharp as broken glass and twice as dangerous. Cassiano had hired her firm to handle a complicated merger, and she'd been the one to figure out that his import business was importing more than olive oil and wine. Instead of running, she'd smiled. That dangerous smile, he'd later learn, meant she was 3 steps ahead of everyone in the room. "Your money's not clean," she'd said during their 3rd meeting. "Careful," Cassiano had warned. "That kind of accusation isn't an accusation. It's an observation. And I'm not reporting you. I'm offering my services." "Why would you do that?" She'd leaned back in her chair, studying him like a chess master studying a board. "Because you're doing it all wrong. Your offshore accounts are too obvious. Your shell corporations have patterns. Give me 6 months, and I'll make your empire invisible." She'd done it in 4. By month 5, they were sleeping together. By month 8, they were married. By the end of the 1st year, she was handling the books, managing the clean fronts, interfacing with the politicians and lawyers who kept them all out of prison. She was brilliant, ruthless when she needed to be. Could smile at a corrupt judge over dinner and slide him an envelope of cash so smoothly that even Cassiano couldn't see the exchange. But at home, in the dark, when it was just the two of them, she was soft and vulnerable. She'd curl into him and whisper the things she'd never say in daylight. Her fears, her dreams, her desperate hope that maybe, someday, they could walk away from all of it and live like normal people. Cassiano had loved her completely. The kind of love that made him stupid and blind. Until the FBI raided 3 of his warehouses in one night. It happened on a Tuesday. Cassiano had been at a restaurant in Florence, having dinner with a city councilman who needed convincing to overlook some zoning violations. His phone had buzzed. Then buzzed again. Then exploded with calls. Marco's voice had been tight. "We've got a problem." Cassiano had excused himself from the table, walked outside into the cool evening air. "Talk." FBI hit the warehouses. All 3. Genoa, Naples, and the one outside Milan. Cassiano's blood had gone cold. How is that possible? They had warrants. They knew exactly what to look for and where to look for it. Casualties. 2 of our guys in custody. Everyone else got out. But boss, they took the servers. They took the hard drives. They took everything. Cassiano had closed his eyes. The servers contained years of records. Shipping manifests. Financial transfers. Communications with every dirty politician and bent cop on his payroll. It was enough to put him away for 3 lifetimes. "Someone talked," he'd said quietly. "Worse. Someone gave them everything. They had digital copies. Emails. Bank routing numbers. This wasn't someone talking under interrogation. This was someone handing them a roadmap." Cassiano had felt something crack inside his chest. The cold, analytical part of his brain that had kept him alive all these years took over. Find out who. Already working on it. It took Marco 4 days. 4 days of Cassiano watching his empire crumble as associates got arrested, accounts got frozen, warehouses got raided. 4 days of wondering which of his people had betrayed him. Marco had called him to a secure location, an apartment they kept for emergencies. Marco had looked 10 years older. His eyes were red-rimmed. His hands shook as he opened his laptop. "You're not going to want to see this." "Show me." Marco had turned the screen around. It was a forensic analysis of the leak. Digital fingerprints showing where the files had been accessed, when they'd been copied, how they'd been sent. Every single trail led back to one person: Ginevra. The files had been accessed from her laptop. Her fingerprints were on the USB drive that had been mailed to the FBI. Her personal email account had been used to send encrypted files to an address that, when traced, led to an FBI field office in Rome. The evidence was undeniable. Marco had looked at him with something like pity. "I'm sorry, boss." Cassiano had stared at the screen until the words stopped making sense. "There has to be a mistake." "There's no mistake. I ran it 3 times. Had our tech guy verify it independently. It's her." "She wouldn't." "She did." Cassiano had closed the laptop. His hands were steady. That was the strange thing. He'd expected them to shake from rage, grief, anything. But there was nothing. Just a vast, yawning emptiness where his heart used to be. "Where is she now?" "Home." "She thinks you're still in Florence." "Don't tell her I'm coming." Marco had nodded, started to say something, then stopped. What was there to say? Your wife betrayed you. Your empire is burning. Everything you built is ash. Cassiano had walked out of that apartment a different man than the one who'd walked in. He'd gone home that night. Their home. The villa outside Milan with the gardens Ginevra loved. The bedroom where she'd sleep with her head on his chest, her breathing slow and even, like she'd found the only peace she'd ever know. She'd been in the study when he arrived. Working late, as usual. Her dark hair was piled on top of her head. She wore his old shirt and pajama pants. Reading glasses perched on her nose. She looked up when he entered, and her face had lit up with that smile. The one she saved just for him. "You're back early. I thought you were staying in Florence until—" She'd stopped when she saw his face. "Cassiano, what's wrong?" He'd closed the door behind him. Locked it. The click had been very loud in the sudden silence. "I need you to be honest with me." Her smile had faded. "About what?" "The FBI raids. Did you know they were coming?" "What?" "No, of course not. I've been trying to figure out how they—" "Don't lie to me." The sharpness in his voice had made her flinch. She'd stood up slowly, setting down her pen. "I'm not lying. Cassiano, what is this about?" Marco traced the leak. "Everything came from your laptop. Your email. Your fingerprints are on the goddamn USB drive they found." The color had drained from her face. "That's impossible." "Is it?" "Yes." "I would never." "Cassiano, you have to believe me. Someone's setting me up. Someone had access to my—" "Who?" "Who had access?" "I don't know. Maybe Marco. Maybe one of the IT guys. Maybe—" "Stop." His voice had been quiet. "Just stop. I'm not lying to you. You're the only one who had complete access. You knew where everything was. You're the only one who could have pulled this off." She'd moved toward him, hands outstretched. Pleading. "Then think about it. Really think. Why would I do this? What would I possibly gain? Immunity. A new life. Maybe you got tired of being married to a criminal." "I love you." "Don't." The word had come out like a gunshot. "Don't say that to me right now." Tears had started streaming down her face. The kind she'd shed maybe twice in all the years he'd known her. "Cassiano, please. I'm begging you. Give me time to prove it wasn't me. Let me trace the access logs. Let me find who did this. 1 week. That's all I'm asking." He'd looked at her, memorizing the curve of her cheek, the way her hands trembled, the desperation in her eyes. I gave you everything, he'd said quietly. Access to every account, every secret, every weakness. I trusted you with my life. And I never betrayed that trust. Not once. Not ever. Then explain the evidence. I can't. Not yet. But I will. Just give me time. He'd wanted to believe her. God, he'd wanted to. Wanted to believe that the evidence was wrong, that someone had framed her, that the woman he loved wasn't a traitor. But he'd built his empire on being smart, on not letting emotion cloud his judgment. And the evidence was clear. Pack a bag, he'd said. What? Pack a bag. We're going for a drive. Cassiano. Now. The tone of his voice had made her stop arguing. She'd gone to their bedroom. Come back 5 minutes later with a small duffel bag. Her hands had been shaking so badly she could barely hold it. They'd driven in silence. Out of the city. Into the industrial district. Past the closed factories and abandoned lots. Until they reached the place where Cassiano handled problems that couldn't be solved with money or words. The old warehouse district. Where the river ran black and cold, and no one asked questions about sounds in the night. It was raining when they arrived. Not the gentle rain that Italians loved, that made the countryside smell like earth and wine. This was the kind of rain that soaked everything. 2 of Cassiano's men were waiting. They pulled Ginevra from the car before she could speak. Bound her hands behind her back. Taped her mouth shut when she started screaming. Cassiano watched from a distance. He'd told himself this would be easier if he stayed detached. But his hands were shaking. They dragged her to the edge of the dock. The same dock where they dumped 3 bodies last year. Where the current was strong enough to carry things away, deep enough that divers never looked too hard. Marco approached Cassiano, speaking low. Boss, are you sure about this? If we're wrong. We're not wrong. But if we are, then I'm wrong. And I'll deal with that. But right now, the evidence says she destroyed everything we built. There are other ways. We could question her. Use leverage. No. Cassiano's voice was flat. She knows too much. If she talks, we're all dead. This is the only way. Marco had nodded, but his face said he didn't believe it. Cassiano walked to where Ginevra knelt on the wet concrete. Rain plastered her hair to her skull. Her eyes were wide with terror. She was trying to speak through the tape, words muffled and desperate. He reached down and ripped the tape from her mouth. She gasped. Cassiano, please listen to me. I don't want to hear it. You have to. I didn't do this. Someone's framing me. Someone who wants you to kill me. Who? Who would want that? I don't know yet, but if you give me time. I don't have time. Do you understand what you've done? The FBI has everything. My associates are going to think I'm weak and can't protect my own operation. They're going to turn on me. Or worse, they're going to assume I made a deal. Either way, I'm a dead man. Then we run. We disappear. I have accounts in the Caymans. We can. With what money? The accounts are frozen. Everything's frozen. Not everything. I have backups. Hidden accounts you don't know about. That had made him pause. You have accounts I don't know about. For emergencies. For something like this. So you were planning to run. No. I was planning for the worst. That's what you taught me. Always have an exit strategy. The logic was sound. It was exactly what he would have done. But it also proved she'd been keeping secrets. Planning something. You played me, he said quietly. No. You made me trust you. Made me love you. And all the while, you were preparing to destroy me. That's not what happened. Then what did happen? Tell me a story that makes sense. Tell me something that explains everything. She'd opened her mouth. Closed it. The desperate calculation in her eyes as she searched for words, for some combination of syllables that would save her life. That hesitation had killed her. If she'd had an answer ready, something rehearsed, maybe he would have believed she was innocent. But the pause, that told him everything he needed to know. I loved you, Ginevra whispered. That's real. Whatever else you think, that was real. Cassiano pulled the gun from his jacket. The weight of it felt wrong. Heavier than usual. Or maybe his soul was heavier. Ginevra's eyes went to the gun. Then back to his face. And something changed in her expression. The fear drained away, replaced by something colder. "Do it then," she said. "If you're so sure I betrayed you, pull the trigger." "Don't tempt me." "I'm not tempting you. I'm telling you that if you do this, you'll never know the truth. You'll spend the rest of your life wondering if you murdered an innocent woman. Better than spending the rest of my life in prison." "Is it?" Her voice was sharp now. "Because from where I'm standing, you're already in one. You've locked yourself in a cage of paranoia and violence. And now you're going to kill the only person who actually loved you." "Love?" Cassiano's laugh was bitter. "You don't betray someone you love. Neither do you." Her eyes bored into his. "But here we are." The rain fell harder. Cassiano's finger found the trigger. Ginevra whispered their phrase. The thing she'd say when he woke up screaming from nightmares about his father, about the things he'd done to climb to power, about all the bodies he'd left in his wake. Tempesta Vienna, Tempesta Virginia. Storm comes, storm goes. It meant, this will pass. We'll survive this together. Cassiano's hand trembled. He thought about the first time she'd said it. 3 years ago. They'd been in bed. He'd woken up choking on a scream, his hands around her throat before he'd even realized where he was. She should have done anything except pull him close and whisper those words until his breathing slowed. Storm comes, storm goes. They'd survived everything together. Her family's disapproval of him. His associates' hatred of her. The violence. The close calls. The nights when enemies came too close and they'd had to run. But they'd survived. Together. Cassiano looked at her face. Rain and tears mixed until he couldn't tell which was which. She wasn't begging anymore. She just watched him with those dark eyes that had seen every part of him, the good and the monstrous, and somehow loved him anyway. He pulled the trigger. The gunshot cracked through the rain. Ginevra's body jerked backward. For a moment, she seemed suspended in air, held up by some invisible force. Then she fell. Backward. Off the dock. Into the black water below. Cassiano stood there, gun still raised, and watched her disappear beneath the surface. The current took her immediately. He caught one glimpse of her white shirt in the darkness, and then nothing. And the echo of the gunshot ringing in his ears. Marco approached carefully. "Boss, you want us to recover the body?" Cassiano didn't answer. He couldn't. If he opened his mouth, something would come out. A scream. A sob. Something that would prove he wasn't the cold, calculating killer he needed to be. He just walked back to the car. They searched the river for a week. Dragged nets. Hired divers. Checked every downstream location where bodies usually washed up. They never found her. Eventually, they stopped looking. Cassiano told himself that was closure. That the river had taken her, and she was gone, and that was the end of it. But he'd been wrong. Because the dead don't stay buried when they still have scores to settle. What Cassiano didn't know, what he couldn't have known, was that Ginevra Belcastro was a survivor. The bullet had hit her in the upper left chest. If Cassiano had aimed 2 inches to the right, it would have torn through her heart and killed her instantly. But he'd aimed poorly. Or maybe some part of him, the part that still loved her, had pulled the shot at the last second. Either way, the bullet punched through muscle and tissue, cracked a rib, and exited out her back without hitting anything vital. The fall into the river should have finished the job. But Ginevra had grown up on the Amalfi coast. Her father had been a fisherman. She'd been swimming in rough water since she was 6 years old. She held her breath. Let the current take her. Didn't fight it. Conserved her energy and focused on the one thing that mattered, staying conscious. The current carried her downstream. Out toward where the river widened and slowed. Her bound hands made swimming impossible, but she managed to angle herself toward the bank. Kicking. Using the current. Praying. Her chest felt like someone had set it on fire. Every breath was agony. But she didn't stop. couldn't stop. Because if she stopped, Cassiano won. She finally reached a shallow embankment 3 kilometers downstream. Dragged herself onto the muddy shore. Lay there gasping, blood mixing with river water, staring up at the rain. That's where Sofia Rossi's men found her. Sofia Rossi was the head of a smaller family. Not as powerful as Cassiano's organization, but ambitious. She'd been watching Cassiano for years, studying his operation, waiting for an opening. She'd had men stationed near the warehouse that night. Not to intervene, she wasn't stupid enough to start a war. But to observe. To see if the rumors about Cassiano killing his wife were true. When they reported back that yes, he'd actually done it, Sofia had smiled. Then one of her men had called with an update, "We found something downstream." Sofia had driven out personally. Looked down at the half-dead woman on the muddy shore. Recognized her immediately from surveillance photos. Ginevra Belcastro. Covered in blood and river water. But alive. "Get her to the clinic," Sofia had ordered. "Keep her alive." Her lieutenant had been confused. "Why?" "She's a loose end from a rival family. We should." "She's leverage." Sofia had knelt beside Ginevra, studying her face. Or something better. They'd taken Ginevra to an underground clinic Sofia kept for emergencies. A place where doctors asked no questions and kept their patients alive through sheer stubbornness and desperation. The doctor, a man who'd lost his medical license for treating criminals, had stitched Ginevra up, pumped her full of antibiotics and kept her sedated while her body. For 3 days, she'd hovered in between staying alive or dying. Fever dreams. Hallucinations. The sound of the gunshot replaying endlessly. On the 4th day, she'd opened her eyes. Sofia had been sitting beside the bed, reading. "You're awake," Sofia had said. "Good. I was starting to think I'd wasted my time." Ginevra's voice had been a rasp. "Who are you?" "Someone who wants Cassiano Belcastro destroyed. And based on what he just did to you, I'm guessing you do too." Ginevra had closed her eyes. The memory was too fresh. His face when he'd pulled the trigger. Empty. Like she'd already stopped being human to him. "What do you want from me?" Ginevra had whispered. Sofia had set down her book. Leaned forward. "I want you to become a ghost. I want you to haunt him. Break him. And when he's weak enough, I want you to take everything he has. He'll recognize me. Not after we're done with you." Over the next 18 months, Ginevra Belcastro ceased to exist. The first step was medical. Sofia had connections to a plastic surgeon in Prague who specialized in making people disappear. He'd worked for intelligence agencies, cartels, anyone willing to pay his exorbitant fees. Ginevra had sat in his sterile office and listened to him explain the procedure. "I can change your face," he'd said carefully. "But understand, this isn't like getting a nose job. I'll be breaking bones, restructuring your entire facial architecture. The recovery will be painful. And there's no going back." "I don't want to go back." He'd studied her face. "You have strong features. Mediterranean. I can soften them. Make you look Northern European. Raise the cheekbones. Refine the nose. Alter the jawline. When I'm done, even your own mother wouldn't recognize you." "Do it." The surgery had taken 8 hours. When Ginevra woke up, her face was wrapped in bandages. The pain was unlike anything she'd experienced. Worse than the bullet wound or drowning in the river. This pain was invasive. It felt like someone was erasing her from the inside out. The bandages came off 3 weeks later. Ginevra had stood in front of the mirror for a long time, staring at the stranger looking back. The woman in the reflection was beautiful. Elegant. She had high, sharp cheekbones. A narrow nose. A softer jawline. Eyes that seemed wider, more innocent. She looked nothing like Ginevra Belcastro. Ginevra had touched her new face, tracing the unfamiliar contours. Then she'd turned away from the mirror and vomited. Sofia had been waiting outside the bathroom. "Are you all right?" "He took my face. He gave you a weapon. The best weapon you could have." "I don't feel like a weapon. I feel like a ghost." "Good. That's what you need to be. But changing her face wasn't enough. Ginevra's body held memories. The way she walked. The way she gestured. The unconscious tics that people who knew her would recognize instantly. Sophia brought in specialists. A movement coach who'd worked with actors and spies. She spent 6 months teaching Ginevra to walk differently. You walk like you own every room you enter, the coach had said. That confidence is distinctive. You need to learn to be smaller. Ginevra had hated making herself smaller. But she'd learned. Practiced until the new walk felt natural and she forgot how the old Ginevra moved. Then came speech. A voice coach who helped her alter her pitch. Just enough to throw off recognition. She practiced until her new voice felt like her own. Next came mannerisms. A behavioral psychologist who identified every unconscious gesture. You touch your neck when you're nervous. You bite your lower lip when you're thinking. You tilt your head to the left when you're listening carefully. These are tells. They need to go. Ginevra had to unlearn herself. Replace every natural movement with something practiced. Become a stranger in her own skin. It was exhausting. Some days she wanted to quit. Wanted to tell Sophia that she couldn't do this, that she'd rather just disappear somewhere and try to forget Cassiano existed. But then she'd touch the scar on her chest. Feel the ridge of damaged tissue where the bullet had torn through. And she'd remember his face when he pulled the trigger. So she kept going. Sophia also trained her to fight. You're going into enemy territory, Sophia had explained during their first combat session. You need to be able to defend yourself. And more importantly, you need to be able to kill if necessary. Ginevra had never been physically violent. She'd been the strategist. The planner. The one who kept Cassiano's empire running smoothly while he handled the brutal necessities. But now she learned to throw a punch. To use a knife. To shoot accurately from distance. She trained until her body was hard muscle. Until she could disarm someone twice her size. Until the act of violence stopped feeling foreign and started feeling like second nature. The worst part was learning to suppress her emotions. Cassiano knew you, Sophia said during one of their strategy sessions. He knew your tells. Your emotional responses. You need to become someone who doesn't feel the way Ginevra felt. I'm not a sociopath. No. But you need to be able to pretend you are. You need to look at him every day and feel nothing. So Ginevra learned to lock everything away. Built walls inside herself. Created a persona, Bianca Moretti, who was calm, competent, emotionally neutral. Some nights, alone in her room, she'd touch her new face and wonder if she was still human underneath it all. The final step was backstory. Sophia's people created an entire life for Bianca Moretti. School records. Employment history. Social media accounts dating back years. References who would vouch for her skills. The background check needs to be bulletproof, Sophia explained. Cassiano's paranoid. He'll dig deep. They made Bianca Moretti a business consultant. Someone who specialized in corporate restructuring. She had an MBA from Bocconi University. 5 years of experience at a prestigious firm in London. Glowing recommendations from clients. All fake. But fake enough that it would pass even the most thorough investigation. Ginevra studied the false history until it felt real. Until she could talk about her time in London without hesitation. Until she believed she was Bianca Moretti. Finally, after 18 months of surgery and training and psychological reconstruction, Sophia had looked at her and nodded. You're ready. Ginevra, no, Bianca, had looked at herself in the mirror one last time. The transformation was complete. She was unrecognizable. The woman Cassiano had married no longer existed. Good. Because Ginevra had loved him too much. Bianca felt nothing at all. Sophia used a shell recruitment agency to plant Bianca in Cassiano's orbit. His previous assistant had quit suddenly. Sophia had made sure of that by having her family threatened, and he needed a replacement immediately. Bianca's resume appeared at the top of every search. Perfect credentials. Too good to pass up. The interview had been the hardest part. Bianca had walked into Cassiano's office on a Monday morning. Her heart had been hammering so hard she was sure he'd hear it. But outwardly, she was calm. Cassiano had been sitting behind his desk, reviewing her resume. He'd looked older. There were lines around his eyes that hadn't been there before. Gray at his temples. He looked up when she entered. "Ms. Moretti." "Mr. Belcastro." Her voice was confident. Nothing like Ginevra's softer tones. "Your resume is impressive." "Thank you. Why do you want to work for me?" She'd prepared for this question. "I specialize in complex organizational structures. Your business interests are varied and international. It's the kind of challenge I'm looking for." "You know what kind of business I run?" "I know you operate in gray areas." "That doesn't bother me." He'd studied her for a long moment, looking for anything that suggested she was something other than what she claimed. Bianca had met his gaze steadily. Let him look. There was nothing to find. Finally, he'd nodded. "You're hired. Trial period of 3 months. If it works out, we'll discuss a permanent position." "Understood." She'd walked out of his office, made it to the bathroom, and locked herself in a stall. Her entire body had been shaking. She'd pressed her hand over her mouth to keep from sobbing. She'd done it. She was inside. The first week was meticulous observation. Bianca learned Cassiano's routines. The time he arrived at the office. How he liked his schedule organized. She was efficient. But during the second week, she started to test him. Calculated gestures designed to provoke unconscious recognition. She brought him coffee the way he used to take it, with 2 sugars. The way Ginevra always made it. He'd frowned. "This is wrong. I'm sorry. I take it black now." Of course he did. Because sweet coffee reminded him of his dead wife. The next morning, Bianca brought it black. Watched him drink it. Watched for any flicker of recognition that she'd known he would change his preference. Nothing. She pushed further. Started wearing jasmine lotion. Not perfume, that would be too obvious. But a subtle scent that would drift through rooms and would trigger memories. She watched him freeze the first time he smelled it. Watched his hand go to his jacket, where she knew he kept his gun. But he didn't confront her. Just looked disturbed and walked away. Good. She wanted him disturbed. Wanted him questioning his sanity and feeling like something was hunting him in the dark. The third week, she placed the lily. She'd waited until he was out for the evening. Slipped into his study. Left a single white lily on his desk. The same flower from Ginevra's funeral. Then she'd gone to her room, hummed the lullaby that Ginevra used to hum, and waited for him to find it. She'd heard his footsteps in the hallway. Heard him burst through her door. By the time he entered, she'd already slipped out the window and circled back through another entrance. She'd returned to her room through the main hallway, pretending she'd been getting water. He'd been standing there, gun drawn, staring at the lily on her pillow. "Everything all right, Mr. Belcastro?" she'd asked innocently. He'd looked at her. Then at the lily. Then back at her. "Where were you just now?" "Getting water." "Why? Did you put this here?" She'd looked at the lily, feigning confusion. "No. I've never seen it before." He'd studied her face, looking for lies. Bianca had learned from the best. She'd spent years reading people, spotting tells, identifying liars. Now she used those skills to become one. Finally, Cassiano had lowered his gun and walked out. Bianca had closed the door behind him. Leaned against it. Smiled. The ghost was inside his head now. And she was never leaving. Over the following weeks, Cassiano began to lose his grip on reality. Small things kept happening. Things that couldn't be explained. He'd find his wedding ring moved to different locations. He always kept it on his finger, but occasionally he'd take it off to shower or sleep. It would be on his nightstand when he went to bed. In the morning, it would be on his desk. He'd confront the staff. They'd swear they hadn't touched it. Bianca would look at him with concern. "Maybe you moved it and forgot?" But he didn't forget things. That's how he'd survived this long. Music would play faintly through the house at night. That same Neapolitan lullaby. He'd search for the source and find nothing. "Old houses make noise," Bianca would say when he mentioned it. "The plumbing. The heating system." But it wasn't the house. It was something else. He started drinking more, sleeping less. His paranoia spiked to levels even Marco noticed. "Boss, you look like hell," Marco said one morning. "I'm fine." "You're not fine. You barely sleep. You're jumping at shadows. Maybe you should." "I said I'm fine." But he wasn't fine. He was being haunted. And the worst part was he couldn't tell if the ghost was external or if he'd finally lost his mind. Then came the night he broke. He'd been working late in his study. Bianca was in the house, working in her room. Everything was quiet. Until he smelled it again. Jasmine. Stronger this time. He stood up, grabbed his gun, and walked into the hallway. "Bianca." She emerged from her room, wearing a robe. "Yes. That smell. What is it?" "My lotion." "I told you." "What brand?" I don't remember offhand." "Why? Tell me. Right now." She looked frightened. "Mr. Belcastro, I don't understand." He grabbed her wrist, pulled her close, inhaled the scent. It was jasmine. But not just jasmine. There was something underneath it. Something familiar that he couldn't place. "Who sent you?" he growled. "No one sent me. I applied for a job and you hired me." "Bullshit. You know things you shouldn't know." "What things?" "Everything. You know how I think. What I want before I ask for it. You move through this house like you've lived here. Because I'm good at my job." He released her wrist, stepped back. His hands were shaking. "Get out," he whispered. "What?" "Get out of my house. Pack your things and leave." Bianca's face hardened. "Are you firing me?" "I'm saving your life. Because if you stay, I'm going to kill you. I'm going to put a bullet in your head because you're either a spy or I'm losing my mind, and either way, you need to leave." She held his gaze for a long moment. Then she nodded. "I'll pack." She turned and walked back to her room. Cassiano stood in the hallway, breathing hard. He'd almost done it. Almost pulled the trigger. Almost killed another innocent woman because he was too broken to see straight. Or maybe she wasn't innocent. Maybe she was exactly what he thought she was. He didn't know anymore. Didn't know anything except that he was drowning. 30 minutes later, Bianca emerged with her bags. She walked past him without a word. Cassiano watched her go. Something inside him screamed to stop her. To beg her to stay because she was the only thing making him feel halfway human. But he said nothing. She reached the door. Paused. Looked back. "For what it's worth," she said quietly, "I think someone's trying to drive you insane. And they're succeeding." Then she left. The door closed behind her. Cassiano stood in the empty house, and he felt completely alone. He walked to his study. Poured a drink. Looked at Ginevra's photo. "I'm sorry," he whispered. "I'm so fucking sorry." The photo didn't answer. They never do. Bianca didn't go far. She checked into a hotel and waited. Because she knew Cassiano. She knew that firing her wouldn't satisfy his paranoia. He'd investigate. Look for proof that she was either a spy or an innocent woman he'd traumatized. And when he dug deep enough, he'd find what she'd left for him. The evidence of Marco's betrayal. She'd spent months compiling it. Tracing the digital footprints that Marco had been so careful to hide. Finding the encrypted communications between him and Sofia Rossi that dated back years. Discovering the offshore accounts where Sofia had paid him to frame Ginevra. It was all there. Undeniable proof that Marco had destroyed Ginevra to weaken Cassiano. Bianca had left it on her laptop. Left the laptop, accidentally, unsecured. Made it easy for Cassiano's tech people to hack into. Because she wanted him to find it. Wanted him to know that he'd killed an innocent woman. And live with that for the rest of his miserable life. But before the final move, Bianca stood in her bathroom, staring at the plastic stick on the marble counter. 2 red lines. A death sentence or a new beginning, she couldn't decide which. She pressed her palms against the cool glass of the mirror, staring at a face that still felt like a mask. "One job," she whispered to her reflection. "You had one job. She remembered the night of the Genovese deal. The adrenaline had been high, the champagne cold, and for a few hours, the wall she'd spent 18 months building had simply evaporated. In the dark, Cassiano hadn't been the man who shot her. He was the man who had once been her world. She had let him touch her not as a spy, but as a woman starving for a ghost of her own life. She looked down at her stomach. The child inside was a tether. If she killed Cassiano now, she'd be raising a fatherless child. If she stayed, she'd be living with a man who had already proven he could destroy her. She picked up the phone. Her finger hovered over Sofia Rossi's number, the woman who expected a corpse by morning. Then, she deleted it. She didn't want revenge anymore. She wanted the truth to burn him worse than a bullet ever could. 2 days later, her phone rang. Cassiano's number. She let it ring 3 times before answering. "Hello." His voice was rough. "Broken. I found what was on your laptop." "I don't know what you mean." "Marco. The evidence. It was him." Silence. "I need to know," Cassiano continued. "Did you compile that information? Or did someone give it to you?" Bianca's grip tightened on the phone. "I found it." "Why? Why were you digging into Marco?" "Because you were paranoid about me. I figured someone must have given you a reason to be paranoid about everyone. So I looked for who might benefit from your isolation." "And you found Marco?" "Yes." More silence. She heard him make a sound like a sob. "I killed her. She was innocent, and I killed Ginevra." Bianca closed her eyes. This was the moment. The moment when she could destroy him completely. Tell him the truth. Make him understand that his dead wife had come back as a ghost and infiltrated his life, and he'd never even noticed. But she didn't. Because now she was carrying his child. And that changed everything. "What are you going to do?" she asked quietly. "Kill Marco. And then—" He trailed off. "And then? I don't know. I don't know how to live with this." "Neither did I," she said before she could stop herself. "What?" "Nothing. Do what you need to do. I'll stay away." She hung up before he could respond. Then she put her hand on her stomach and made a choice. She was going to tell him. Not now. Not while he was about to commit murder. But soon. Because their child deserved to know both parents. Even if one of them had tried to kill the other. Cassiano killed Marco that night. He sat in the back of the SUV, the glow of his laptop illuminating the jagged scars on his knuckles. He didn't look at Marco, who was driving. He just watched the digital trail. "Pull over, Marco." The SUV slowed to a crawl near the rusted gates of the old dockyards. Marco's grip on the wheel tightened. "Boss, we're a mile from the meeting point." "The meeting's changed," Cassiano said, his voice a low, vibrating hum. They stepped out into the wind. Cassiano didn't rush. He walked to the edge of the pier, the exact spot where he had pulled the trigger 2 years ago, and waited. "You did it right here, didn't you?" Cassiano asked, turning the laptop screen toward Marco. "You sat in that office, watched me break, and then helped me dispose of the only thing I ever loved. How much did Sofia pay you to play the loyal dog while you gutted me from the inside?" Marco's face didn't crumble. Instead, it hardened into a long simmering resentment. "She was a liability, Cassiano. You weren't a leader anymore. You were a husband. You were getting soft, looking for exit strategies. I didn't just take the money. I saved the business from a man who had lost his edge." "You didn't save anything," Cassiano whispered, drawing his weapon. "You just gave me a reason to become the monster you always wanted me to be." The gunshot didn't echo. The heavy mist swallowed the sound. Marco slumped against the damp concrete, his eyes widely opened. It should have felt like justice to Cassiano. Instead, it felt empty. He'd killed the wrong person 2 years ago. And killing the right person now didn't balance the scales. Nothing would. He went home, sat in his study, put his gun on the desk and stared at it for a long time. It would be quick. One pull of the trigger and he'd never have to feel this crushing guilt again. His phone rang. "Bianca." He answered without thinking. "Yes." "Don't do it." Don't do what? What you're thinking about doing. I can hear it in your voice. How would you know what I'm thinking? Because I know you. Something in her tone made him pause. How could you possibly know me? We've worked together for a few weeks. I'm coming over. We need to talk. Bianca. But she'd already hung up. She arrived 30 minutes later. He let her in without question. They sat in his study. Her in the chair across from his desk. Him behind it, the gun still within reach. I'm pregnant, she said. The words hit him like a physical blow. What? 4 weeks. It's yours. He stared at her. That's impossible. We only. Once. I know. But it happened. Cassiano put his head in his hands. This is insane. Yes. I don't even know you. No. You don't. Something in her voice made him look up. She was watching him with an expression he couldn't read. But you knew me once, she continued. A long time ago. What are you talking about? Bianca reached up and pulled out her contact lenses. Her real eyes, Ginevra's dark, fierce eyes, stared back at him. My name isn't Bianca Moretti, she said quietly. It's Ginevra Belcastro. And you shot me 2 years ago and left me for dead. Cassiano's world stopped. He stared at her. At this stranger with his wife's eyes. No. That's not possible. The bullet missed my heart. Sofia Rossi's people pulled me from the river. They gave me a new face. A new life. And they sent me back to destroy you. Cassiano stood so fast his chair fell over. He grabbed the gun, aimed it at her head. His hands were shaking so badly he could barely hold it steady. Stay back. She didn't move. Shoot me. You've done it before. You're not her. She's dead. I have a scar. Upper left chest. From where you shot me. Want to see it? This is a trick. Some kind of... Tempesta Viena, Tempesta Vie, she said softly. The words broke something inside him. The gun fell from his hands. Ginevra. She stood slowly. Walked toward him. He wanted to back away but couldn't move. She stopped in front of him. Took his hand. Pressed it against her chest, just above her heart. He felt the scar through her shirt. The exact size and shape of a bullet wound. His knees gave out. He collapsed, and she went down with him, holding him as he sobbed. I'm sorry, he gasped. God, Ginevra, I'm so sorry. She held him. Said nothing. Just let him break. When he finally pulled away, his face was destroyed. Why did you come back? To kill me. That was the plan. Then why didn't you? She put her hand on her stomach. Because I'm carrying your child. And I can't kill their father. Even though I killed you. You didn't kill me. You tried. But I survived. He looked at her. At this stranger who was somehow his wife. I don't understand. Your face. Surgery. Good surgery. Your voice. Training. Lots of training. I should have known. I should have seen. You saw what I wanted you to see. I became someone else. Someone you couldn't recognize. Why torture me? Why not just put a bullet in my head? Her eyes hardened. Because you needed to suffer. Like I suffered. You needed to know what it feels like to question your sanity. To be haunted. To live with guilt. I do. Every day. Good. They sat in silence. Finally, Cassiano spoke. What happens now? I don't know. I came here to destroy you. But now... She touched her stomach again. Now we have a child to think about. I can't ask you to forgive me. No. You can't. And I don't know if I ever will. Then what do we do? She looked at him. We make a choice. Every day. To try. Or to walk away. I don't want you to walk away. Then prove you're not the man who pulled that trigger. Prove you're someone worth staying for. He nodded slowly. I'll spend the rest of my life proving it. You'd better. She stood and offered him her hand. He took it. They'd been destroyed. Both of them. Broken into pieces and rebuilt into something different. But maybe broken things could still fit together. Maybe scars could become foundations instead of wounds. Maybe ghosts could learn to be human again. Or maybe they'd destroy each other completely. Either way, they'd find out together. Cassiano got his second chance, but does he deserve it? If you think he should have paid for his sins, drop a NO in the comments. If you're rooting for their new beginning, drop a yes. Don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss our next twisted tale. See you in the next one.